If you want to speedrun 𝐻𝐻 Delta, as it's maybe your first game, you feel like, hey, this is the moment where I want to join the speedrun scene, you maybe have seen that runners also have the ability to automatically let their runs be timed, both in segments and also without the loads. This is done via software called Livesplit, and I'm going to show you in this video here from scratch how you can set it up yourself. Especially if it's your first time, I try to answer as many questions as possible, but if you have even more questions, hit me in the comments down below and I try to support you as much as I can. And of course, a gentle reminder, if you want to get even more support, join the 2 discords that are linked in the video description down below. One for the 𝐻𝐻 speedrunners, where there's more people that are also very helpful and get you started on how to use the software, and of course also with the speedrun route and all the tricks, and of course my own discord if you want to join that one as well. Alright, let's begin. So of course, the first bit of software we need is Livesplit. Livesplit is a free and open source software which you can get on livesplit.org, and under the downloads tab you can just download it here. It will give you a zip file that we can later then use. I'm also going to show you another file you can download later. This is a little plugin for Livesplit. This is the ASL Var Viewer. This allows us to also inspect more data from the game and then display it within Livesplit. This is quite a cool feature, especially if you're running on PC, so I'm going to recommend you download that as well. Simply go to the link in the video description, go to releases here, and on releases just download the livesplit.aslvarviewer.ui.zip. Once you've downloaded all the files, I put them here on my desktop. I'm going to open the Livesplit zip. I'm going to make a new folder here specifically for Livesplit. This is not a regular exe, so it won't just be installed in your programs. It's going to make this new folder called a Livesplit. Open that here on the left. And then I'm going to mark all of these files here and put them into this folder. You can use Livesplit like that right away. If you want to move the folder somewhere else, say for example you want to have it in your programs, you can later then also use this livesplit.exe file, right click it, and then create shortcut. This little shortcut is then a direct link that you can use to open the program here. So I'm actually going to close this little folder here, and we're going to show you later when we talk about Var Viewer how to also install this plugin inside one of these folders. For now, let's just work with the basic version of Livesplit. So once I double click Livesplit here, and this little window here is Livesplit. It may not look like much, but this is something we can now modify in the layout, for example, to make it look closer to what you would see on another speedrunner's stream. So first off, let's see how it works. It's quite simple. On right click, you can go here and see a lot of options. If you go to control and hit start, you see, hey, my timer is running. Great. If you right click again under control and you hit split, it will stop because it has only one segment right now. There's a very easy way how you can get real-time splits here. It's like your stopwatch on your phone, for example. If you then hit reset, it sets back to 0 and you can start another run. Of course, you do not want to do this manually on PC. On PC, we can use something which is called an Autosplitter. An Autosplitter is just a little bit of code that reads out data from the game that you're playing, and based on that data can determine if it should start the timer or pause it, and of course, then finally split and finish the time. So how do we get that here in the case of 𝐻𝐻 Delta? Well, first, of course, I'm going to have 𝐻𝐻 Delta running on PC here. That's what you need. For console players, this Autosplitter does not work. Because, very simply said, we cannot read out data from the console. We need to have the game running on the same machine as Livesplit is running. Who knows, maybe in the future there will be an application that can remotely send Livesplit data. But at least right now in 2025, sadly, that's not a thing. Alright, so where you want to get started normally is where we go right-click, Edit Splits. And here in the Splits editor, we see a bunch of fields. What do they all do? Well, let's start from top. First off, we're going to define the game that we want to participate in. Metal Gear Solid Delta, ideally. I just type in Metal Gear Solid and we see already a lot of these game entries here. And this is basically based on the public speedrun.com games library. I have a feeling we're going to change it to Delta menus. There we go. Metal Gear Solid Delta. It auto-completes Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. We click that. And immediately also another thing happened here. An Autosplitter and load remover available has appeared as a message here. Programmed by the Demented Salad. Thank you so much for that. And we can activate it simply here by clicking Activate. All of a sudden, now Livesplit has changed in the background. And it has also loaded in 𝐻𝐻 Delta as the title of the game. And a few other things in its layout. We're going to take a look at these in detail in just a moment. For now, we just want to also define the category that we want to participate in. So in this case right now, there's any %, all bosses, and glitchless. Let's say you want to participate in glitchless. This is all the same for any of the categories, but we pick one example here. A big glitchness, and under another tab here called additional info, you can see even more information that we can give to Livesplit. Let me pull that up a little bit. And here's a bunch of data we can set. These are all fields that you can also use on speedrun.com. And these are filters actually that help you to determine cool and interesting data that you can show then in Livesplit. For example, if you say platform, I play on PC because we're ideally using this here for the PC for the Autosplitter functionality. 𝐿RT Plus is not yet its own category, but we assume you play 𝐿RT Plus. And for platform, once again it's PC. Difficulty, let's start with very easy. It's the same for anything, pick one of the difficulties. And apparently there's also yet another new game and 𝐿RT Plus option here. I'll just set it as well to 𝐿RT Plus. The rank, since you maybe don't know which rank you will get, can be left open, and it will be treated like a wildcard. And in the region, it also doesn't matter, as all of the regions are on the same leaderboard. So, that's your additional info set. Now I'm going to go over back to the tab called Realtime. It looks exactly the same as Gametime. And these here in this table are your segments. If you don't know, segments are basically subsplits, which you can use to then see after you finish the fight, hey, I took from this time to this time to finish a boss. Say, for example, you start the game and you do your first segment at the end of the Virtuous Mission in case of Metal Gear Solid Delta. So let's use that. Just name it Virtuous Mission. And that's your first segment. It will also appear as a name now here. Now, of course, there's a bunch more you probably want to time. And so we're going to go and insert below a bunch more of these segments. I'm just going to call these basically by the boss encounters for now, as to have a simple example for Metal Gear Solid Delta. But of course, you can go into even more detail here. So after the Virtuous Mission, probably you want to split out the Ocelot unit, the pain. As we're doing glitches, we're not skipping this fight here. And one last called the boss. So this is, for example, how you can segment your Livesplit. A full run would go from start to finish, and then between those we have certain points where you want the Autosplitter to skip to the next segment, which is called splitting. You can do this yourself manually. So if I go here and right click, under settings you can find this setting here. Under settings there's also a bunch of these hotkeys defined. Now you can use them however you want. I personally have a different set of hotkeys here. I like to do it my way. So in my personal preferences, I press 3 in order to start the splitter, and I reset with 5, so it's a little bit away from the V. The undo split is on 4, and the skip split is on 6. Switch comparison, which I can explain in just a second, is on 7 and 9 from an numpad. And you want to define them as global hotkeys. So even when you're not focused on Livesplit, the program itself, you can still split. So what happens now if I press 3? Well, it starts the timer. And if I press 3 again, it also splits. And now Virtuous Mission took me only 3 seconds. I'm just that good at the game. And you can basically see how, like, constantly you go through the entire game. And once you've beaten all the bosses, let's do an example here. At the end, after you've beaten the final segment, if you split one more time, your time is now fulfilled. You have 20 seconds for the full game. Congratulations. You can reset this timer by splitting once more, and it will go back to 0. And now your previous performance has been set as your personal best. You can also start a time, as we see here, once again with 3. And if I press the numpad 5 here, I'm just going to reset it. Because I said, I lost some time here. I'm going to redo my run. And of course, you can also skip ahead a segment. If you say, oh, the splitter didn't work, for example, or I missed to split manually, you can just skip ahead and it'll be fine. And if you make a split accidentally too early and say, oh, that's not a realistic goal, for example, this is not the best segment, you can come back and then split manually yourself. So this is the basic functionality of Livesplit. And of course, like I explained, we want to have the Autosplitter do it for us. So I'm going to open Edit Splits again, and I'm going to show you also how to reset your times. You simply go to Other and Clear History and Clear Times, and now your full document is free of any timings again. Now, as I said, the Autosplitter is already loaded in here. It is available, and if you go and activate it, like you pressed here, activate if it's not activated yet, it will be downloaded into the folder. You can check this here by going to Livesplit, and it should be under Components if I'm not mistaken. So under Components, if I scroll down, eventually, there we go. There's the MGS %20 delta.asl. The %20 just means that there's a space here and this name got sanitized. There's also a setting here, an XML file, which you can edit, but I would recommend doing this within Livesplit. But it just goes to show that if an Autosplitter is provided by the community and you can download it via Livesplit, you can find them here in Livesplit and then components. Let's close this folder quickly and see actually the settings. So if I press the settings here, I can see, aha, this is where it is located. There's a script path that goes to the folder. And as we've seen, yes, it's in Livesplit, components, and then the name of the .asl file. .asl is simply the Autosplitter language. We have options, so we can allow the Autosplitter to start for us, to split for us, and to reset for us. And if I close all the options here, with a basic overview of all the optional split segments here, you can either choose whenever you leave a map, and then it will split for you on map change. Or if you want to keep it more general, you can change also on game progression. So in my case that I have here with a very general overview here, I'm going to go and activate game progression, Virtuous mission, and when I complete the Virtuous mission, that's all I want to have, the Autosplitter split automatically for me. Same thing then with Operation Snake Eater, the second half of the game. If I defeat the Ocelot unit, if I defeat Ocelot, if I defeat the Pain, and so on forth, I want to have all of these points split for me. You can, as you see here, also split a lot more, but that's up to your discretion. If you want to have more points, for example, leading towards the boss fight and only the boss fight itself being counted, you can also set, for example, start of a boss and end of a boss as their own segments. Play around with it and get a feel for it. This is my basic line that I use here. Basically, every boss that I find and then finish, because we don't fight necessarily everyone, then it should split for me. It will also end here after the joy or the boss, and then have additional final split here. At the current timing here, on September 16th, 2025, the final split is defined as the ending of the cutscene with the Ocelot duel. So, actually, after the boss, there's one more segment missing. So I'm going to quickly add this here in below, called the Ocelot duel. Because as we've seen here, the game starts and starts the segment Virtuous mission, and then when the Virtuous mission is over, it splits and goes to the next segment, the Ocelot unit. Finish the Ocelot unit, starts the Ocelot segment, and so on. So each segment is basically starting as the previous one ended and goes on. And until the end, of course, as we defined it, once we beat the boss, we have one last segment, which then finally ends the full run after the Ocelot duel is over. So with that being said, I can now go and actually run Metal Solid Delta, and it should already work. So as we see on screen here, I currently have Delta running. I can move Livesplit quickly to a corner where it doesn't obstruct my view. And I can also show you how you can put Livesplit, for example, on a different monitor or change the layout. But we just want to make sure that the Autosplitter is actually running as expected. For that, I'm going to start a New Game Plus run. So I'm going to go New Game Plus here, or load a New Game Plus save from Load Game. In this instance, we're just going to start quickly with New Start. Very easy. High tips. Start. And you will notice, well, I just started a new run. Why doesn't it split? The starting point here for Metal Solid Delta Snake Eater, again, based on September 16th, 2025, is currently defined as once the first codec call comes in. So, the first few cutscenes, they don't even count towards the timer. So I'm going to skip this here, skip this, until we reach the codec, and then it should automatically start. There we go, our timer starts as the codec begins, so the starting point was done automatically here. Alright, and if I go for the game here, you can see also that, again, the timer runs perfectly in line here with our expectations. And what I promised as well, the Autosplitter will also remove the time here when a cutscene is playing. So if I go here to hang, after the codec there will be a cutscene, and normally timer should stop there. Huh, weird. There's a cutscene running, but the time doesn't stop. Why is that? Well, you were missing one last piece of information here that you need to set in Livesplit, and I purposefully put this behind to explain quickly an example of what real-time and game time is in Livesplit. In Livesplit, if you go right-click again and set it compare against, you have a bunch of options here. Personal best, best segments, and average segments is basically a comparison method between your former runs and your currently actively run. Real-time and game time are two timing methods, and they're completely different. Real-time is basically just once you start a timer, it will run. There's no pausing, there's no interrupting. Real-time is not meant to be changed. Game time, however, refers to what Livesplit understands as a secondary timing method, and it can be manipulated. Game time is either directly read out from the game, which you can do with Delta as well, or it's a self-defined version of a timing method. In case on PC, we use load removed real time, meaning we have the timer start at a certain predetermined point, which is once the first codec happens, and then it will stop at the end after the Ocelot duo. Of course, like I explained, the game time will also have pauses, so stopping the timer temporarily when we're in a cutscene. So instead of comparing against real time, the time that we can later then actually submit to SRDC, if we run on PC for Medical Soldier Snake Eater, is game time. So that's why we need to change it to that. As we see here, timer is here. So let's go to another cutscene quickly, and then we should see that the timer is also stopping. Such as, for example, right now, as we load into a new area. Loads are removed and cutscenes are removed. And also opening the pause menu, like here, for example, that is also pausing the game time. Say, for example, you go to options and change your graphics to 30 FPS or 60 FPS so we can do airwalk skip, which we wouldn't do in a glitchless run, of course, because that's not really useful there, because it is a glitch, right? It validates the purpose of a glitchless run. But in any percent, of course, we would do that here. And then in that instance, changing the FPS value would also be pausing the game time. And as we see here, I load into the next area loads, time pauses, and it stays paused as we enter a cutscene here, immediately on entering the next level. Perfect. So as I leave the main menu here, at least right now, the timer does not reset. You have to do it manually, either right click, control, and then reset, or in my case, as I set it to this, numpad 5. And once again, if I go load game, and I start a new game run here, one last time, the timer would only start when actually the first codec appears. So it will only start once the codec happens, not before. Come on, skip. 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 And here we go. Time starts when the first codec begins. I'm going to skip the codec. And now it will load into the level. And as we see here, timer was paused until we're actually able to move Snake around here. Perfect. So that is all working. Now we have a load remove timer actively splitting for us. So Livesplit is all set up. But let's say, for example, you want to change a few things in the layout and, for example, also show the very cool live stats. Of course, in Delta, we can also go here in the pause menu, go to records and titles and check our records now to have a current overview of what our stats are, to see, for example, if we are currently on the round for Foxhound. Just pretend I'm on extreme difficulty. The alternative also would be to have that read out via Livesplit. That is what I'm going to show you now in this next part. So I'm going to quickly stop Delta from running here, and we're going to add the Livesplit as a Var Viewer component to Livesplit. For that, let's quickly pause Livesplit and close it. I don't want to have my splits saved necessarily, but speaking of, you also want to save your splits ideally, so go to yes. In my case, I'm just going to call it here MGS Delta demo. And here is my .lss file. This is the Livesplit splits file that we can then use. If you double click this, it will open Livesplit and will then immediately show again every setting you had before. The full game, glitchless, very easy. In this Livesplit file, you can also change it to have a different category to compare it against, for example. And then you can save it also as a different file. And via these different files, we usually also navigate our timings and history between different categories, for example. But alright, how do we install Var Viewer? Quite simple. First we open our install location, which is Livesplit folder here. Go to components. I'm going to go over to the zip file here, and I'm going to drag this livesplit.asa Var Viewer file over here into this folder. And that's it. Close this folder and this zip file. I'm going to open the splits file again, which, as I promised, will open Livesplit itself. And now we can also add more stuff to the layout. In our layout, we can do a couple of things. We reach it by going right-click, edit layout, and then with the layout editor here, which can help us to define everything that we see. Let's go quickly to layout settings. The very first tab of layout settings, which is not part of the layout editor, is always active. And we can see here, we can define the background. If you want, you can even set it to a color that you can then filter in OBS, for example. So as I go here, you can, for example, go to a certain, I don't know, tone of brown, maybe if you want. Let's say this specific shade, as the assumption is, this shade is something that will not get really shown on Livesplit anywhere else. I'm going to copy the first 6 digits here of the color. The last 2 digits is just the alpha transparency. Since the alpha transparency is 100, meaning it is not transparent at all, 100% visible, we don't need the last 2 digits of this color hash. Only the first 6 digits are relevant to us. Gonna go OK here, and wherever it's still black, you also need to change the color to this value. So I'm gonna go here and then add 0, 0. Of course, you could have copied the 0, 0, so you don't need to manually add it here. Okay, now everything's in this shade of brown. Again, it doesn't matter which color you pick. Just make sure it's a color that's not present on the rest of your Livesplit window. Let me actually open up here my Livesplit. I'm going to quickly just add another Livesplit window or a window capture. Call Livesplit demo. I'm going to select the Livesplit window I just opened. And there it is in its full glory. I can now change this here and put it anywhere on screen. But of course, it won't look that nice. So I'm going to actually go and add another filter. Go to Effect Filters and go to Chroma Key. And in this Chroma Key, on the key color type, I'm going to go Custom Color. And here in this key color, I'm going to select Color. And finally, under HTML, this is the 6 digits I want to add here. We're going to drag the similarity all the way down so everything else appears again. There we go, 200 should be fine. You can define the smoothness if you want, color spill to take out a little bit of that color. And I'm fairly certain you can do even better with a better color. This is just an example here. But now I can actually take here, Livesplit on my recording, and it will be present the whole time. So once I leave here, drag OBS away. Now Livesplit is transparent right next to the actual window. And this, for example, is if you have 2 monitors, a way where you can take your Livesplit and put it somewhere else. Of course, I gotta first close all the dialogues, can drag it somewhere else, and OBS still shows me the now transparent Livesplit. I'm gonna quickly bring, of course, Livesplit back itself here. I'm just gonna leave it next to the transparent version. I'm gonna go back to edit layout. We're gonna once again open it here. So now that it's transparent, we can simply change everything that we need. First off, let's check out timer. Some runners, for example, have 2 different timers on screen. How do we make this happen? Well, we only have 1 timer here, but I can show you if you go to plus, timer, detail timer or timer, doesn't matter, you can add another timer. Just the timer is really just this one line here. Detail timer shows you both the current time total running and the current segment time running. Meaning if you go and check the detail timer, you can see, oh, I just finished Virtuous Mission, and then the segment timer resets back to 0 and counts from 0 again, while the total time continues counting the entire run. Can be helpful to know, for example, if you have a part where you lost a lot of time, say, for example, at the pain, and you can tell with the detail timer, oh, I lost like 5 minutes at the pain. Not very uncommon example if you play on extreme difficulty. If we open it here quickly, we can see also there's a lot more settings in detail timer. I'm not going to go into much depth here, but say, for example, your full run here is expected to go at least almost an hour, so minutes should be included per default. It's all fine. And you can even decide the level of detail you have here, up to 3 millisecond digits or no milliseconds at all, only full seconds. The time that you will report is normally also with milliseconds, but it's up to your own discretion. At the moment, I don't know if you need the milliseconds. Can be handy to have that on screen. So it's really up to you. The good thing is, if you don't have this shown, so say, for example, you only show full seconds here. Let's go for the example. I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to finish the game entirely. So, come on. And it stands here 6 seconds. You can still go right-click, edit layout, detail timer, and then change it to show the milliseconds. And the information is still there. It's not deleted. It's still existing. And the same thing also goes then if you were to actually confirm your run. Say I press split again. Now it gets saved in your data. If you go and check out Realtime, there's also all the information up to the 3rd digit after the 2nd. So yeah, with that being said, let's go a little bit through the timings here. And if you want, like I said, you can also show the real time on screen here. An example that you can use, for example, is I'm going to change the height here. So real time and in-game time or load remove time are roughly the same size. And let's say we're also going to show the sub timer here. Well, maybe you want to leave it like this. Now, if you have these 2 timer methods and you don't know which one it is, how about we add some text to show it on screen? You can do this, for example, with information and text. I'm going to drag it with the arrows on top here. I'm going to add a text above the first timer. We call this RTA. I'm going to add another timer with text, put that above the detail timer, and call this LRT. Nice and simple. You can change even the fonts, the font sizes and everything in the general layout, for example, which is here in this tab, this one. But I'm going to leave that to your discretion. I'm just going to give you some examples here. And from that, you can now start the game and see even more details. You can also change the amount of splits you see on screen. If you say, hey, I don't want to have literally every split on screen, only the most current one running, you can do that. There's a lot of options you can play around with this here. Same also with the title. The title is not necessary. If you don't want to show it, you can remove it. You can remove the previous segment. Like, it's all optional, really. Even the splits display is optional. You can have just this run actively on the window because it's that, you know, space saving. But in the background, it will still go through the segments and splits. So after you open it, let's say you go through the run, you can still check out edit splits and see all the details in the split file. Now, finally, let's talk about the Var Viewer. This is something I promised. So how do we add this? We add it via layout once again. And I'll go to plus and Var Viewer is under information. There is now ASL Var Viewer. And now we can edit here. And we can use it, for example, to add something interesting. But as we see here, oh, please load ASL script or start game. This is your sign that the game needs to be running actively so the Autosplitter can find the memory addresses and assign it to variables. And these then can be once again read out via Var Viewer. So let's quickly open up Delta. All right, now Delta is actively running. It has not changed the message here. This is fine. Simply close the layout editor, open it again. And now we can see, there's no error message anymore. So how does this work? There's two different value containers you can select from. And I know already that the IGT, for example, is under current state. As I go through the dropdown, there we go. Here it is, IGT. And we can see it already running, which is normal. Don't worry about that. The IGT does indeed tick here at the start of the game when you just open the menu. And if you were to start a new run, it would actually reset again to 0 and then start properly from 0 to count. Now, IGT right now is only the direct value as read out from memory. It's not actually a timer, so it's not directly one-to-one to what you would see on the score screen. Maybe in the future update we can change it so IGT can be calculated and show you instead in hours, minutes, and seconds what your time is. There's a lot more as well, as we can see here. You can see the current HP, you can see the amount of alerts, the kills you have, the amount of serious damage you have taken, the total damage you've taken, the food types you've eaten, and other interesting stuff. Under variables, there's a lot more here, but variables usually are just there to actually help the Autosplitter to do its thing. So for our purposes here, at least, showing score screen relevant data, that is not under variables. Let's go back to current state. As soon as I switch again here, value IGT gets added and is already running. You can give it also a value label, as I see here, IGT. Now it's here on the left. Let's add a few more of these ASL viewers. So I'm going to add here quickly the alerts. And lastly, also health. We can override the layout settings here if we want. We can make this in green text. Oops. I said green text. There we go. In case you want to have a visual cue also what your value is here. So the color, you can also change it like that. And as we see, because we're only filtering OBS, the brown color, this green color for health is still visible. All right. Let's show one last time how everything works when the game is actually running. So I'm going to drag this Livesplit window to the side on my secondary monitor. And thanks to OBS recording, it's still visible on screen. And once I go load in a new game now, one last time, should everything work. As you see now, IGT has already restarted, but because of the timing rules right now on PC, of course the timer, as explained earlier, is only starting when we actually reach the first codec. The IGT will also continuously tick after you reach the score screen. This is also normal, this is how Metal Gear Solid 3 did it, and this is also how Metal Gear Solid Delta uses its IGT. It basically just takes a snapshot at the end when the score screen appears. And there we go, now timer start. And just notice there's one mistake here. Actually, it's showing currently in both timers here the same thing. Let me fix that. So in timer, I want to make sure it's not current timing method, but real time. And in detailed timer, it's game time. We're going to compare here the detail with our best segments and a current comparison, which normally is one of the three, but you can also hard code it to be like personal best, best segment, and average segments. Okay, now that I changed the timer to showing real time, now it's also actually different. And the bottom time is our actual load remove time. This makes a lot more sense now. And as I promised also, under the detailed timer, there's now a small timer. This is just for the segment, which will run from the start of the game until we've finished the virtuous mission. And here we go. Let's go to one area where we can actually get an alert, for example, and kill someone as well. just so we can see that this is also working properly. This is information that the Resident Evil scene has, for example, done differently. They're using entirely different software for that, which is the Speedrun tool, or SRT. It's also very cool software, but at least in the Metal Gear circles, Livesplit and a few plugins, that's what we normally use here. So if you may have seen how Resident Evil does it, it's slightly different, but it's still showing, it's basically the same idea, right? All right, once again, a cutscene happens here. And like I said, during Codex, the time does actually run. We load into a level, and here we go. Here's the first level where we have an opponent. I'm gonna go here and do I have even an M19 in my inventory? I got a Patriot, that's fine. We'll swap to the Patriot here, so we're gonna get spotted by this guard. And there we go, our alerts went up by 1. And if we go and kill these 2 dudes, we also have 2 kills now. So everything is counting as it should. And naturally, if you think, oh no, what did I do? Well, at least for your casual run, of course, you can go load in the last save. And we'll also see here, not only does your IGT reset, but also your alerts and kills. So you know, like, yeah, I'm still good for a rank 1 run. For example, Foxhound on extreme difficulty. All right. And that should be everything you need to know about how to set up a Livesplit, how to make it work with the PC version of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. And of course, as well, now you know how the load remove time works, where it starts, where it stops, and especially when it pauses for you, so you can submit this time then to speedrun.com. With the Var Viewer, you also know now how, of course, you can add everything on screen, so you know, for example, your current kill count, if that is relevant for you, and stuff like health, and of course, the actual IGT running for science reasons. I hope this tutorial helped you, and of course, I wish you best of your luck on your speedrun journey. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them here. And as a reminder, there's also 2 Discords linked in the description down below. The Metal Gear Speedrunners Discord, of course, where there's lots more experts as well that will help you learn how to run this game, of course. And my own Discord if you want for more in-depth discussion about anything else that could be interesting. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day and catch you later.